What is up, everyone? Thralls of Metal back again. I'm Shredlord.
Necrotic Nick.
And we are here to bring you a little bit something different today. It is an album review nonetheless, but a little bit off the beaten path as far as metal goes. This is the second album by the son of Eddie Van Halen. Yes, sir, I am talking about Wolfgang Van Halen and his band Mammoth WVH.
Mammoth II. I mean, it makes sense. The first one was just, the self-titled one. And, I've been wanting to check out some of the stuff just because, long-time Van Halen fan. I've been listening to them since I was a wee lad. And I went in pretty much completely dry on this one. Like, I had no, exposure. No lube. No exposure to anything that he's done other than the fact that I knew he played in, Van Halen for a little while. So this comes out on the 4th of August on BMG Records. This band formed in 2015 in LA. Named after the OG name of Van Halen, which I think is a really cool nod. This is, again, their second album, and this is really interesting because, all right, the thing that I really like about this is he's not simply just trying to retread his father's glory. This doesn't sound like Van Halen, and that's actually kind of refreshing, especially considering the amount of comments and, I guess, press that he got about, and you should just do stuff that sounds just like Van Halen. It's like, no, man.
It's been done before.
Yeah, forge your own identity. And he definitely has in here, because this is flat out just hard rock. I would call it that. Like, there are some more metallic moments on here, but he's got a wide swath, and I would say next to, his dad in terms of like a huge guitar influence and songwriting influence, the next biggest one I would have to say is Dave Grohl. There is a lot of stuff in here that is very much in the vein of like Foo Fighters, power pop, just big rock hooks, anthemic choruses, and, just kind of like lush organic production.
Going through this album actually was kind of a trip down memory lane, so to speak, for certain things. With him not being that much younger than us, we're not that old. Well, some of us are, but some of us are younger. You could definitely hear a lot of these influences that he was drawing from that were very prominent in music when we were growing up in our teens.
Yeah. Honestly, like my whole take on this album, before we even get into like individual tracks, is this kind of walks an interesting line between like a retro rock movement, like bands like Helicopters or Graveyard, in terms of like that more like 70s sound, bordering on early 80s, and modern rock, like, just stuff that's out there right now. But it's Wolfgang's, I think, background in terms of like who he's played with and, who his family is, that there's this pedigree that comes out in the music, because I think he just kind of tries harder, especially on guitars. You don't hear lead work like he plays in modern rock, like flat out. That definitely comes from, well, dear old dad, and the fact that I think he just likes riffs and melodies a little bit more. Like, they're a little bit above like the standard stuff.
Yeah, and one interesting fact about him as a musician, period, and I don't think we touched on this yet, is like the first album, well, I shouldn't say like, because we didn't really talk about that either, but basically on the first and second album, he recorded everything. He did the guitars, he did the bass, he did the drums, he did all the vocals, and he has a band that does, that tours with him so he can perform these songs live. But as far as the composition goes and the execution and everything, that's 100% on him. And for him to be able to pull off that many different instruments as well as he did is really a testament to how talented this kid is, for sure.
Yeah, generally, like, when you hear one-man bands, you're kind of wondering, like, all right, which instrument are they not as proficient at? And honestly, he's proficient at all of them. The thing that I was kind of wondering is, like, all right, guitar and bass, vocals, like, I think those are probably the ones that, make a little bit more sense, but all right, drum work. I was kind of expecting, like, maybe it's a drum program or something like that. Nothing wrong with that if you're a one-man band. But it's real drums, and he drums really well. Actually, there's a lot of nuance in his drum work, which I really wasn't expecting. Like, I was just kind of expecting straightforward rock, kind of grooves, 4/4 time. But there's, some off-time stuff in here. The fills are creative.
And let's be honest, everybody talks about how his dad was Eddie Van Halen. Let's not forget his uncle is Alex Van Halen, one of the baddest fucking rock drummers of all time. Dude. So, yeah, there's plenty of great examples for him to go out and, learn this stuff. And I bet you growing up in that house, it was just music 24/7, which was awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine it wouldn't be. But yeah, this album opens up with authority. The first 3 tracks here are very energetic, in your face, giant rock hooks on the chorus, lots of melody, but there's also like an intensity, like a bit of heaviness, like something that kind of goes a little bit, above and beyond like the standard hard rock stuff, like, kind of flirting with metal. Like there's a really cool breakdown in the opening track, Right, with a question mark, and Another Celebration at the End of the World has a thrashy section that's kind of on par with like modern Metallica, albeit better drumming. But yeah, there's like just kind of extra stuff peppered in, and again, like these influences that he's pulling, like you have stuff that is clearly like more in the 70s, more in the 80s, definitely some 90s rock in there too, and a little bit of modern flavor as well, and it's all kind of capped off with like just big hooks. Like vocally, I was pretty damn impressed with him. He's got a solid range. We were talking about who he sounded like, and like a little close to Miles Kennedy.
Not in the tone of his voice per se, but in my opinion, some of his note choices when he goes to the chorus and stuff is very similar to things I think that Miles Kennedy would do in Alter Bridge or with Slash, whichever you're listening to.
I mean, well, the vocal phrasing too was also like, how the hook was kind of implemented. But I like these energetic songs right away. And then 2 longer songs in here, which I wasn't really expecting anything over the 6-minute mark, because that's kind of unheard of in most hard rock now. But Take a Bow and Better Than You are actually 2 standouts for me. They both have a totally different sort of vibe. Like they are more drawn out, but they don't drag. Like they take time to let the bridge get like heavier or a little bit more dynamic. Tons of room for lead work, because man, there is lead work all over here, and it is fucking scorching.
Yeah, and there's not leads on every track, but when he decides to put a lead in there, he makes it's great. There is enough tropes of the Van Halen heritage to just make me smile. Eddie Van Halen is a god, and it's still very creative. It's still very him. It doesn't sound like he's just ripping off things. He's got a really cool and unique blend and a way to kind of mash all these different styles together. And one thing that I appreciated on this album too is even the songs I wasn't that crazy about, they never drug on too long. Most of these songs were nice, 4 minutes, and they're digestible. When you have songs like that, especially in this kind of a format, when you don't like something and you're listening to it, or not even not like it, but not dig it as much as the rest, it doesn't feel painstaking to get through. So this album did have a good pace to it.
Yeah. Take a Bow, when I saw it was like almost 7 minutes long, I was like, okay, I mean, all right, it's hard rock. This isn't like a prog rock song or like a big droning doom metal song. Like, let's see what he does in the song to, kind of justify this length. And honestly, does a great job. Like there's a nice kind of clean build to it and lets the melody settle in. And he's great about layering melodies on here with guitars as well as the vocal harmonies too. And it kind of just keeps slowly building, big bridge, and then this really awesome lead in. And honestly, probably one of the leads that stood out the most to me, because it's a little bit more nuanced. It's a little bit less shreddy, but it does cap off with some absolutely brilliant tapping, which, that was just like a little love letter to Dear Old Dad, because every time the tapping happens on here, it's like, man, that's Dad. That's 100% Dad.
Yeah, man. And it just makes you smile.
Warms the cockles of your heart.
And it probably warms my cock a little bit, but it's been a hot day outside, and honestly,
cockle.
Everything's so I got you. I'm sorry.
You're not.
No, I'm just honest. The final track, Better Than You, was the closer and the second of the long tracks on this album. And I think it was a personal favorite of mine. I thought it was a good way to close it. Both the albums started and closed very well, I thought. I really enjoyed the opening track as well. But the thing that made it stood out to me is it had a little bit more of a heavier dose of that heavy rocking vibe to it, especially in comparison to some of the songs that came right before it, like Waiting, Erase Me, and I'm All Right. Those kind of take a back seat, and they're a little bit more melodic based. So to end on that kind of a stronger vibe with a track like Better Than You, I thought was a good way to close it.
Yeah, I like the riffs on that one. There's really cool leads on it, and the vocal harmonies on Better Than You are really good. Actually, kind of like calling back to the Beatles a little bit. And as we kind of noticed, and we're like, does this kind of sound like Coheed and Cambria? Just like a little bit, like just like a straightforward rocker without like the weird proggy nuances in there. it's kind of similar. And, it's just an immediate hook, and I love how it fades out. And there are some, like, definite throwbacks in here, like ones that are just flat out kind of old school rockers, like I'm All Right and Erase Me. I'm All Right, that song starts off like the beginning of, like, 8 different Def Leppard songs. It really does. Like, that's the first thing I thought of. I could see Joe Elliott fucking rocking his fucking, Union Jack shirt, strutting with the bulge out. But, it's a kind of an 80s rocker. Like, there's some cool melodies. The chorus is infectious, albeit kind of cheesy.
There's definitely a little bit of cheese going on here, but that's just my opinion for all pop rock songs.
Yeah.
But I have to say that he does a good job of not laying on the nozzle of Cheese Whiz. It's melodic enough. And also, too, I don't think we talked enough about how the hooks are melodic, but they're still not... like cookie cutter. And what I mean by that is his note choices, his progressions beneath the choruses, they weren't just your standard kind of 3-note build-up kind of stuff. They were very well thought out, and it made it much more easy and enjoyable to listen to.
Yeah, Erase Me is kind of like an 80s power pop, like the Romantics, The Knack, like, kind of like that. Like, just like a hard rock, but kind of not that hard. Like, it's very digestible. It's very single-ish. But there are some songs in here that, well, I will say are kind of filler. And, this album does run, close to 50 minutes. But Miles Above Me, Waiting, and Optimist were kind of ones that, I don't know, like, I couldn't get into, and I couldn't get into for, like, different reasons. Miles Above Me, well, I mean, you said it right away as soon as we heard the opening strumming. It's like, it kind of sounds like Jerry Cantrell's My Song, but it's not as good.
Definitely not as somber.
No, it's more vocally driven. Right? The riffs are kind of just like 90s alternative rock. Like, this could have been on the radio in like 1995, and I would have been like, this is all right. I wouldn't buy the album based on this song, though. It screams... a 90s rock single. It's not terrible, but it feels kind of dull in comparison to the other songs where, again, you have more, like, flavor to the riffs and the melodies. Like, there's just more passion behind it. This one's just kind of like, well, this is like a single. Like, it's just designed to have a hook. And Optimist is a good song with some heavier notes. Like, it's a little bit more dark, but at the same time, like, there's like this chorus that feels way too triumphant in that darker song. It doesn't feel kind of uniform in the mood. It
started out really good for me. It had this nice dark somber mood, but then the hooks kind of just went to like default every 2000s alternative metal band.
Yeah.
And like Nick said, it just didn't feel cohesive to what was already laid down prior to that.
Yeah, like Chevelle, Breaking Benjamin, Seven Dust. I don't necessarily have a problem with any of those bands necessarily, but, they do get kind of repetitive, and, I didn't feel like it was a full commit to it. Like, again, you have this kind of bright chorus on it that just, I don't know, it feels really too, like, juxtaposed to what the dark, nature of the song is.
And probably my least favorite, I'll say,
it's mine,
is Waiting. It has this very kind of Coldplay vibe to it. The chorus is very emotional, very, very pop laden, and to me, it just feels like one of the weaker tracks on here. And I'm sure this track means a lot, and he's singing his heart out, but for me, it just felt really weak and not as filled with life as some of the other tracks.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, all right, this does have like nostalgic vibes for like, like 80s rock, 70s rock, 90s rock, and part of that 90s rock era was kind of filled with bands like Lifehouse and Vertical Horizon and The Calling, and it kind of has like the big single, because those three bands actually, I think we're only known for like one big single, and then they fucked off into obscurity, thank God. But yeah, it has that feel. Like, this is the uber bright, anthemic kind of ballad. I don't know. Like, it's just, again, it's one of those songs on here that just doesn't seem to fit. Like, maybe the whole idea is like, maybe we need kind of a ballad on here. It's like, well, I mean, you got softer, more pretty moments inside of other songs that do a lot more. But yeah, that was kind of a standout, but not for a good reason. But honestly, most of this was really good. And going in, completely blind to everything that he's done so far, I really enjoyed his playing, his songwriting, and I like the fact that he really is forging his own identity here. So overall, I'm going to give this 3.5 stars. Even the weaker tracks that were kind of off-putting or just felt like filler or, kind of fluffy singles, they're not terribly written. In fact, all of this is really well written. I just didn't happen to like those songs. But when I did like the writing on here and I did like the songs, they're really solid. Like, there's good, beefy rock hooks on here. The production's absolutely fucking excellent. I think the longer songs on here in particular really showcase a lot of his songwriting ability. And man, it is just kind of refreshing to hear big, lavish lead guitar in just straight up rock songs. Because there was a whole era where just modern rock abandoned lead guitar at all. Like, you just got like some dreary melody or something like that.
Or there was that time the grunge movement came in, and if you knew how to play a lead or what a scale was, you were a pleb, which is complete shit. By the way, that's a whole nother video, because I'll spit piss and fire for 30 minutes straight. But anyway, I digress.
Yeah, but no, overall this is absolutely awesome. If you're a big fan of like Foo Fighters, not so much like Van Halen, but they're like a little bit of Van Halen. But I mean, Foo Fighters is the big comparison on here. But if you just like heavy hard rock with as much heart as there is like talent in terms of songwriting, check this out. This is really good.
Yeah, I got to give it a 3.5 as well. Wanted to give it a fair listen. Wanted to really take it all in. I did not listen to the first Mammoth album.
Yeah.
I do follow the dude. His career, I think he's doing a great job making his own name for himself, and he did a hell of a job at the tribute concert with Justin Hawkins and Dave Grohl and all them. That shit was badass. And for him to come out and basically go, this is what I like. This is who I am, and he put it out there in a very creative and unique way because he puts his own spin on this kind of genre. So I think it was really well done. The touches of guitars were excellent. The nods, whether he realized it or not, to Van Halen. Just hearing some of that Van Halen guitar coming out in some of these songs too, it just made it a little more special, man. So 3.5. Give this a listen. If any of the stuff or bands we talked about tickles your fancy, man, give this one a listen for sure, because there's a lot to enjoy on it.
Yeah, this is a really cool way to keep a legacy going, I think. Like, it's not retread, it's something fresh, and it's his. And yeah, there's enough flavors, in there that you'll definitely get you in the feels if you're a longtime Van Halen fan.
So, if you like what you saw here, please hit the like button. If you're not subscribed to our community, we would love to have you join us. Hit the subscribe button. Also, we are on Patreon. There is a link down below where you can click on and support your 4 favorite metalheads doing douchebaggery things at a pretty steady pace.
Now, the web store is currently under construction, but it should be resurfacing relatively soon because we made the shirt order and we cannot wait to show you them. We'll probably do a giveaway for one of those too, so stay tuned for that because we want to show off the design before we actually open up the store because we're kind of proud of them. But yeah, tons of stuff coming your way from the channel, and of course, thank you all so much for liking, subscribing, following. It is absolutely amazing doing this. I actually had someone recognize me at a gas station today. I was like, "Hey, are you Necrotic Nick?" It's like, "Yeah. Fucking love the channel." It's weird. I'm not used to being recognized for anything. Like, I don't know. It's kind of a cool fucking feeling. But yeah, you guys all fucking rule. It's amazing running India. It's cool going over the comments, even though I got to do them in kind of bundles. But yeah, you guys are fucking amazing. And once again, thank you all. And we'll get you later.